Alexia Daval was born on February 18, 1988, into a family that was widely respected within their community. Stability, discipline, and public service defined the household she grew up in. Her mother, Isabelle Foulet, served as an active and principled member of the local city council, known for her firmness, integrity, and dedication to civic responsibility. Her father, Jean-Pierre Foulet, operated a small cafe that was more than just a business. It functioned as a lively meeting point for locals, especially those passionate about horse racing. Together, Isabelle and Jean-Pierre raised two daughters, Stephanie, the elder, and Alexia, the youngest. The sisters shared a close and supportive bond built on mutual respect and shared values. Their upbringing emphasized hard work, honesty, loyalty, and perseverance. From a young age, Alexia demonstrated a unique blend of vibrancy and reliability. She had energy and ambition, but she also carried herself with a level of responsibility that impressed those around her. Family members often described her as determined and forward-looking, someone who believed that discipline and effort could carve out a promising future. Within her family circle, she was not only loved but admired, seen as an example of what consistent values and ambition could produce. Jonathan Daval's early life unfolded in a very different environment. Born on January 16, 1984 in the small town of Vesoul, he grew up in a large family of 6 children. His mother worked as a child care provider, dedicating her days to caring for young children, while his father was employed at a factory. Life was modest but structured. However, when Jonathan was just 13 years old, his father died suddenly from a heart attack. That loss profoundly altered the trajectory of his adolescence. Those who knew him during that period observed a marked shift in his personality. He became quiet, withdrawn, and emotionally guarded. While he never actively sought attention, he rarely opened up either. Soccer became his primary outlet, the one space where he felt connected and confident. He played regularly in amateur leagues, and for years the sport offered him a sense of belonging. After finishing high school, Jonathan pursued studies in information technology, eventually securing a position in a consulting firm. At work, he developed a reputation for precision and reliability. He was not outspoken or charismatic, but he was dependable. Colleagues described him as someone who preferred structure and avoided confrontation. Emotionally restrained and meticulous, he appeared to live a steady, controlled life. Jonathan met Alexia in the early 2000s. Their connection developed gradually rather than explosively, but over time it deepened into a serious commitment. For both of them, it was their first long-term relationship. In many ways, they seemed complementary. Alexia was expressive, driven, and assertive, while Jonathan presented as reserved and measured. Their contrasting personalities appeared to balance each other. After several years together, they chose to marry. On July 18, 2015, they exchanged vows at the town hall in Gray, a ceremony that held particular emotional weight because it was officiated by Alexia's mother, Isabelle, acting in her official role as city council member. For the family, the moment symbolized unity and pride. Following their honeymoon in the Pacific Islands, the couple settled into a house that had belonged to Alexia's grandparents. They renovated the property together, creating a home that reflected their shared ambitions. Outwardly, their life seemed harmonious. They exercised regularly, ran races together, and projected the image of a health-conscious, motivated couple building a future. Yet beneath that composed exterior, tensions were beginning to develop, particularly surrounding their struggle to start a family. While the outside world saw stability, internal pressures were quietly accumulating. Jonathan's structured personality and deeply rooted insecurities, combined with unspoken marital strain, would later take on devastating significance.
On the morning of Monday, October 30, 2017, the search ended in tragedy. In a wooded area near the town of Gray, in a section that was rarely frequented and set away from the main paths, authorities discovered a body. The terrain was uneven and overgrown, not the kind of place one would wander into by accident. Officers arriving at the scene immediately noted that the body had been partially concealed beneath branches and leaves, suggesting an attempt had been made to hide it. There were also visible signs that someone had tried to set fire to the body and clothing, in apparent effort to destroy evidence. However, the attempt appeared incomplete, as though it had been rushed or interrupted. Forensic teams secured the area and began their methodical work. They documented bruising and trauma consistent with a violent encounter, with particular attention given to injuries around the neck that strongly indicated strangulation. It was clear to investigators that this was not an accident or a natural death. Formal identification soon confirmed what the family feared most. The victim was Alexia Daval, only 29 years old. For her parents, her sister, and those who loved her, hope gave way to devastating certainty. Within hours, news spread rapidly throughout Gray and neighboring areas. In a tightly connected community where serious violence was rare, the shock was profound. As media outlets began reporting the discovery, speculation quickly followed. Local newspapers, television stations, and online platforms covered the case extensively. Many early discussions centered around the possibility of a random attacker. Some commentators even floated the theory of a predator operating in the region. Social media amplified rumors and personal theories, fueling anxiety among residents. The wooded trails where Alexia had often run were long considered safe, a popular destination for joggers, cyclists, families, and dog walkers. After the discovery, that sense of safety vanished almost overnight. Women who once ran alone began meeting in groups. Parents restricted outdoor activities after dark. Conversations throughout town repeatedly circled back to a troubling thought. What if the threat was not a stranger at all? What if it was someone from within the community? Meanwhile, forensic investigators focused heavily on the signs of attempted burning. To them, it suggested planning, an effort to conceal evidence and obscure the true cause of death. That detail indicated that whoever was responsible had taken deliberate steps after the act itself. As the missing persons case officially transitioned into a homicide investigation, additional law enforcement resources were deployed. Officers combed the wooded area for trace evidence, fabric fragments, impressions in the soil, discarded items, anything that might reconstruct the final movements of the victim and the perpetrator. The investigation moved forward under growing public pressure as fear and curiosity merged into an atmosphere of suspicion. As mourning ceremonies began, the focus of public attention shifted toward Alexia's family. Funeral arrangements were made, and memorial gatherings brought together hundreds of residents who wanted to express support. At the center of many of these events stood Jonathan Daval, her husband. He remained close to Alexia's parents, Isabel and Jean-Pierre, often appearing beside them in photographs and news footage. Observers described him as visibly shaken yet composed. He spoke softly in interviews, describing his wife as energetic, disciplined, and full of life. On November 5, 2017, nearly 10,000 people participated in a silent memorial march through Gray, an extraordinary turnout for a town of its size. Participants carried white flowers and photographs of Alexia, walking quietly in solidarity. Jonathan led the procession alongside her parents, reinforcing the public image of a grieving husband standing united with his in-laws. During speeches at the conclusion of the march, Isabel spoke about her daughter's strength and character, while Jean-Pierre thanked the community for its support. Jonathan then addressed the crowd, describing Alexia as the center of his life, his motivation and foundation. His words were widely broadcast, and many viewers perceived them as heartfelt and sincere. Newspapers published front-page images portraying him as a symbol of loss and resilience. To much of the public, he appeared to be the devoted husband shattered by tragedy. Behind the scenes, however, investigators followed standard procedure. In cases of this nature, those closest to the victim are routinely interviewed first. Jonathan was no exception. Initially, his statements were straightforward. He maintained that he had gone to work shortly after Alexia left for her run and had remained there repairing equipment for much of the morning. But as detectives reviewed timelines and gathered supporting evidence, inconsistencies began to emerge. Small contradictions surfaced regarding the sequence of events and the precise duration of his time at work. Surveillance footage and witness accounts could not conclusively verify every detail of his alibi. Additionally, investigators noted injuries on Jonathan's body, scratches and marks that he attributed to an argument the night before Alexia disappeared. He insisted the disagreement had been brief and had not escalated significantly. However, the nature of the marks raised questions about whether the confrontation had been more intense than described. Rather than dispelling suspicion, his explanations prompted further scrutiny. As forensic teams searched the couple's residence, they paid particular attention to bedding and textiles. A sheet used to cover Alexia's body was determined to match a set from their home, suggesting that the crime may have originated inside the residence before the body was transported. Jonathan's company vehicle, equipped with GPS tracking, also became central to the investigation. Data indicated the vehicle had traveled near the wooded area during the night prior to the discovery. Tire impressions found near the scene corresponded to his tread pattern. Furthermore, cell tower records and surveillance evidence contradicted earlier claims that he had not used the vehicle during that time frame. While investigators continued exploring all possibilities, including the involvement of a third party, the accumulating evidence increasingly pointed toward Jonathan. The gap between his public image and the emerging forensic record was becoming harder to ignore.
As investigators continued assembling evidence, Jonathan's position gradually began to shift. During repeated interrogations, his earlier certainty gave way to inconsistencies and evolving explanations. What had begun as firm denial slowly transformed into attempts to redirect suspicion. In January 2018, during a particularly significant questioning session, Jonathan made a startling accusation. He claimed that Gregory, Gay, his brother-in-law, was responsible for Alexia's death. He went further, alleging that Alexia's parents, Isabel and Jean-Pierre, along with her sister Stephanie, were aware of the truth and had participated in concealing it. The accusations shocked both investigators and the family. These statements directly contradicted Jonathan's earlier accounts and were unsupported by forensic evidence. Detectives examined the claims carefully, but no material proof implicated Gregory or any member of Alexia's family. To authorities, the accusations appeared to be an attempt to deflect mounting pressure. For the Fouillot family, however, the impact was deeply painful. Individuals who had stood beside Jonathan during memorials now found themselves publicly accused. The shift dramatically altered public perception. The image of a grieving husband began to fracture as the contradictions accumulated. Given Jonathan's fluctuating statements, psychological experts were brought in to evaluate his behavior. Reports described a personality marked by emotional suppression, insecurity, and difficulty managing confrontation. Specialists noted that while Jonathan avoided conflict in daily life, he appeared capable of sudden and uncontrolled reactions under intense private stress. Other evaluations emphasized traits of dependency and a strong need for structure and control. These assessments offered context for his pattern of denial, followed by partial admissions, only to be retracted later. Throughout 2018, this cycle continued. At times, Jonathan appeared to accept responsibility for aspects of the case. At other moments, he reverted to blaming Gregory or suggesting broader conspiracies. Investigators interpreted the pattern as a strategy to delay proceedings and create confusion. Meanwhile, forensic findings remained consistent. The GPS data, textile matches, injury analysis, and cell records increasingly narrowed the scope of plausible explanations. By late 2018, the accumulation of evidence became overwhelming. On November 23rd of that year, Jonathan acknowledged for the first time that he had been directly involved in Alexia's death. He described an argument that escalated during the night, claiming he had lost control during a dispute over intimacy. However, even this admission did not remain stable. Within days, he once again attempted to shift blame. For Alexia's family, the repeated reversals felt like ongoing emotional injury layered upon their grief. A significant turning point occurred on December 7, 2018, during a direct confrontation organized between Jonathan and Alexia's family. Faced with Isabel's questions and shown a photograph of his wife, Jonathan broke down and acknowledged that he alone was responsible. The following year, on June 17, 2019, investigators conducted a reconstruction of the events in the early morning hours to mirror the conditions of the original incident. During this reenactment, Jonathan walked authorities through his actions step by step. He admitted that the argument had become physical and that he had struck Alexia before ultimately strangling her. After realizing the gravity of what had occurred, he transported her body to the wooded area and attempted to set fire to it in an effort to conceal evidence. These revelations significantly clarified the timeline and dismantled the earlier narrative of an accident or shared responsibility. Additional psychiatric assessments in 2019 further examined underlying marital tensions, including the couple's difficulty conceiving a child and the strain it had created. While these elements provided background to the relationship, experts emphasized that none justified the deliberate actions that followed the confrontation. By the end of 2019, Jonathan's defense strategy had effectively collapsed under the weight of his own admissions and the consistent forensic record. Jonathan Daval's trial began in November 2020 under public health restrictions that limited courtroom attendance and required distancing measures. The jury consisted of 6 members, 5 women and 1 man, who listened to successive days of testimony. The court reviewed Jonathan's multiple versions of events, from initial denial to eventual confession. Forensic experts detailed the physical findings, while psychiatrists testified that although Jonathan displayed problematic personality traits, he was legally responsible for his actions. Alexia's parents took the stand, asking for clarity and a complete recounting of what had happened to their daughter. When Jonathan addressed the court, he acknowledged that he understood the fatal consequences of his actions. His defense argued that the killing occurred during an uncontrolled dispute rather than as a premeditated act. However, the prosecution emphasized the sequence that followed, the transport of the body and the attempt to destroy evidence, as indicators of deliberate conduct. In the final moments of the proceedings, Isabel once again asked him to explain everything fully. Jonathan knelt in the courtroom and asked for forgiveness, though he offered no new information. On November 21, 2020, the verdict was delivered. Guilty of intentionally killing his wife. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison, with a mandatory minimum of 12.5 years before eligibility for release. No appeal was filed. In subsequent civil proceedings, Alexia's parents sought financial compensation for emotional and material damages. Although their initial request was higher, the Court of Appeals in June 2022 upheld the conviction and set compensation at €160,000. With that decision, the legal chapter of the case concluded. For the community of Gray, the question of responsibility had been answered. Yet for Alexia's family, the emotional consequences endured far beyond the courtroom. A reminder that behind public proceedings lie private losses that cannot be undone.